So first, welcome. For people in the first row, please do not take picture. I see you, Natal. I'm serious, I know your name. So, my presentation is one configuration management in SDN. My name is Michael. Quickly, who I am for people who didn't see me in the last 10 years speaking about free software and everything. I'm a sysadmin at Red Hat, working in the open source and standard team, which is a team where Dave is also working. The goal of the team is to help upstream project to be successful, a strategic upstream project. So that means from time to time to do configuration management, like organizing event, sometimes doing design, and sometimes getting a sysadmin to fix whatever was set before we acquire a company or when there is problem, like when another sysadmin is leaving, you need to pop another one. Usually it turns to be me. And for that, I'm mostly using Ansible quickly because I'm using Ansible as a way to get as much talk as possible to be accepted. It's a very popular topic, but just to be sure, who never heard about Ansible, can you raise your hand? Good, so there is a few people, so I will still explain, sorry for the other. So what is Ansible? Ansible, it's an orchestration tool that's mostly used around server. So for sysadmin, we will see later that it can be used by also network engineer or anything, or any kind of people, but this is the SDN room, so it will be about network. That's similar to, in purpose, to a lot of tools like mCollective or Funk or whatever control a random botnet on Windows, in the sense that it's supposed to be executing a command remotely at some larger scale. One of the advantages of Ansible when compared to everything else is that it do not have an agent. That means that you do not need to install something on the remote system, you do not need to maintain something on the remote system, and that's already quite a lot. I mean, if you are sysadmin, you will know that everything that you do not maintain is something that do not crash, something that do not page you in the night, that let you sleep, play, drink club mate, whatever you want to do. I mean, and in order to do that, it uses SSH by default. I say it by default because there is all kind of other way you can use Ansible, but for what interests us is using SSH. Yeah, that's a quite flexible way to just execute remotely module. So for example, let's say you are an admin, you want to shut down your whole production, you just type that and that's it. Suddenly you have a lot of free time because whoever does that would likely be fired, at least if I am the boss. But if you want to do a large-scale problem, you sometimes just one command is not enough. Sometimes it's enough, I mean, see that? If you want to do more, there is the concept of playbook, which is basically just executing several commands. So it's like a script, but because I know that even if because this is a developer meeting, I want to be sure that people understand this is not a script. This is a description of several steps. And it looks like a script because there is loop, there is conditional, but no. It's mostly a custom domain-specific language on top of YAML, because everybody loves YAML. Hopefully, if the tool did appear 10 years ago, it would have been XML, and people will be crying right now, but it's totally different. Because YAML, well, it's nice, but it's just description. You have also Jinja. I don't know if people are using Python, but Jinja is a templating language, one out of 100 templating language in Python. This is a national sport for Python coder. And that's used for templating file, for expression and everything. And because just adding step one by one is not really a good idea, there is also a concept of a role where you say, I want to deploy, I don't know, a Quake server on that server, so I create a role, and the role will just execute everything in one logical unit for deploy the Quake server, just at the same time as the Minecraft server and everything. So you can use your cloud for really important stuff and business critical game. There is a various concept of dependency between roles. If you want to set up PHPVB to discuss about the Minecraft server that you just set up, but you can just deploy PHPVB that will pull Apache, MySQL and everything. everything can be done on multiple systems, which is one huge advantage of Ansible when compared to other stuff. This is used for rolling update, etc., etc. So that's just the basics. That's the whole concept of configuration as code, which is something that most sysadmins know. Maybe the student do not know. Maybe the developer do only the part about code. I was expecting to get a network engineer. So now I explained basically what is Ansible. I guess the people who are late know already what is Ansible because I'm not going to repeat. So now what about SDN? That's the second part of the presentation, or at least of the title. So I hope that lots of people there have been already hearing about SDN. I'm not a specialist. So from what I know, SDN is the new revolution for network, because the new revolution for sysadmin is container. And tell me if I'm wrong, but from what I see from discussing with people, there is a traditional way, which is you have switches, you have router, you have everything, and you just connect by SSH. When someone opens a ticket, you verify everything, and that's it. That works. Otherwise, we would not have working internet at the moment. Everything works because you have like a simple fixed config. You do not need to make a lot of change, and it's very manual. And it seems that, well, the new way is SDN. So for people who do not know, I just cut and paste from Wikipedia, which is not exactly easy to digest. So I will just focus on the part which is programmatically controlled. The whole idea of using Ansible for that is to, well, even if it's not a script, it's still programmatically controlled, which permits to separate the data, such as IP address, firewall rules, ACL, password, from the exact hardware you have. I see that as very useful for heterogeneous network. I don't know how it's at your work or, well, your home if you have like your own Cisco switches, but at work we decided to drop Cisco to go to Juniper, and that means that suddenly we have $1 million of investment hardware who is still running, and we have a new hardware, and we need to control both of them. And for that, yeah, you need separation. So here comes Ansible network module. So there is a lot of device supported. I'm not going to give a list, I just took the only one I know, which is not a lot. So for example, there is a F5, Juniper, Cisco, there is several Dell OS. I didn't heard about Pan OS, but it seems that it exists, otherwise people will not speak about it. So I'm not also going to show everything. It's going to be, well, quite boring, and I don't like when people are too bored in a presentation. So I will just focus on a quick example, not because most of them are cut and paste, but they try to organize everything. So there is always for each brand the same type of module. So the first one you need to be aware of, that's FATS module. When you want to manage your whole set of hardware, you need to know what is running, what are, I don't know, the uptime, so you can be sure that you reboot everything from time to time, the version, the IP address. It seems to be quite important, especially for network. So there is a whole set of FATS module. We are just here to return facts. So that return information that can be used later for decision, such as reboot only the system we are running system, I don't know, 5.3.6, or update everything for switches we are doing IPv6 and everything. For example, so I took only the Juniper stuff because that's quite complete, because that's the one I plan to read later, and I'm sysadmin. If I need to read documentation for a talk, it has to be also useful later, so I can spend more time on IRC and discussing about systemd and Docker, and all life was better before. So there is, for example, the Junos fact that you just execute as a module. It's not executed directly on the router. Ansible is written in Python. I think I'm going to surprise no one to say that Python is not running on Cisco, Juniper, whatever switches. So you need to execute on a Linux host. It uses the Junos OZNC module. I hope that it means something for someone, because I have no idea how it works. I suspect it's some REST API or something like this. You need to give a password, username, SSH key, and everything to connect. And yeah, so you get your information. But if the goal was just to get information, you do not need to have your Ansible for that. You can just pay an intern that connect to everything and write on a paper, and that's it. You get your report. You want to do more. For example, you want to configure. So it turns out that, well, since the last slide, Python is still not running directly on the switches, so you still need to execute on a host. Then there is various interface. People who already use Cisco know that everything is done line by line. If I'm not wrong, when you get a config file, it's something line-oriented. So you can say, yeah, for that configuration, I want to get, for example, no DHCP. For that switches, I want to get a DHCP snooping on that port and everything. So the line-oriented part is quite interesting because suddenly you can put some configuration in one part of the playbook, some configuration in another part without mixing. If you do not like this because you want to control everything, there is another solution which is using a template. You just give a template file and you do whatever you want with Jinja. If it's easy enough for people to use it, it should be also easy enough for network sysadmin to do that. And for example, one specific example is a Junos config module, which is, again, usually it's a Junos for the Junos family and something config. Sometimes they do handle more than the standard way, which is a line and a template, for example, for Junos. And I've not been paid by Junos, not yet. They handle rollback, so if you fuck up completely the system, well, you can come back at the previous step, which is, again, quite useful. I mean, I do not make mistakes, but I heard that some people do, so that's for them. Sometimes you want to do more than just getting files and configure stuff, such as executing command. So as the name implies, surprise, it executes command and returns your output. For example, you want to know what is the current status of who is connected or the root or anything like this. Well, you can use that. So it's quite a low-level interface in the sense that you do not have a high-level view of I want to get the root. It executes that set of commands, and that's it. You get strings that you need to parse by yourself, and that's where you start to regret of using Ansible and not a Python script. But if you want to get more, there is also various modules. Each of them are specific to each family. So there is for the non-config operation, again, for Junos, if you want to install a package, there is a Junos package, you install package. You just give a file name and I don't know how it works, it copy, it install the package and that's it. There is various high-level constraints for specific module. So for example, sometimes not for Junos because I have only 4 modules and I did spoke of the 4 of them. For NixOS, no, not NixOS, NexusOS, which is for Cisco Nexus, I think, you can specifically configure the NTP. So that means that you do not need to know the exact command and there is some level of abstraction. In case, I mean, that's not that it happened, but in case Cisco decide to break something on compatibility, well, maybe you can isolate yourself from that. The good part is that it can be combined with a non-network, which is a whole part about DevOps, where developers discuss with ops without insulting each other. For example, you install a VLAN. No, you install a VM. Then you can set the VLAN for that VM. So the VM is for people for sysadmin. The VLAN is for people in the network team. And you just want to have one single operation in case you decide to do a lot of VM, but you are not, well, I would not say crazy, but you are not rich enough to pay for OpenStack and the 1,000 people needed to maintain. You can do all you want directly with Ansible. And I think that's all. If people have questions, you can ask them now. And we have 10 minutes left, so ask me anything, even if it's not related, if it's for another talk, if it's, or I can work with someone as marvelous as Dave, or this kind of stuff, And if you do not want to ask me questions right now, you can contact me by mail on IRC, and not on the several stuff that I list and shit, I forgot the, well, not on Google, please, not on Facebook, and this kind of stuff. So, again, if you have questions, I'm also okay if you decide to upload for 10 minutes. It's good for my ego. Not that I need that, but still good. So, no question? So yes.
You say SSH and other possibilities to use Ansible for continuing the browser.
Yeah. So the question is, Ansible is using SSH. What are the other possibilities? So there is, for example, you can connect using Func, which is a remote execution tool. You can use a Salt. There is a system where you can connect using chroot. It's not SSH. It's connecting locally, but it's kind of the same. You connect, you get a root. You can connect to Docker image. There is something to use Guestfish to connect to a VM which is not running. There is a jails. There is no telnet. It could be fun, but I could not find a telnet server to test it. But yeah, you can use Paramico. What? Yeah, SSH is good. Yep.
On top of this, maybe it's important for people to know that there is a raw connection plugin.
Yeah.
The raw connection plugin makes it possible to send command without SSH or whatever the connection you're using. After that, you can just send raw command without knowing ID. So
right.
It's something that you can be using for stuff that don't make ID.
Yeah, so it's not a question, but I will still repeat. So the gentleman just at the first row said that you can also use a model called Row, which basically allows to execute command without Python. I did use that for starting stuff on NetApps. It was using Ansible to do 2 jump posts and then starting to execute something on NetApp. So you can also do that, but then it's equivalent to using expect, which is not very high level. And I should have done that. It would have been like 1 or 2 slides more, but questions are fine too. Yep, another question?
What do you think Ansible will internet or encapsulate with the ground management of the networking devices? I understand they're proposing mechanism and logic, but I think that there's some overlap of things implemented with the young models, the netconf models of the device.
So the what model?
The young netconf solutions. So just how things get connected together or some approach.
Okay, so the question is, how does Ansible work with the netconf model?
Yeah.
I have no idea, because I've been waiting since too long for getting access to switches at work to test that, and I got access last week, and I had no time to break the network to test that. So I don't know. I did see netconf somewhere in the doc, so there is something, but if you have more complicated questions, you can either go on the IRC channel, which is, oh, there is someone who, okay, there is netconf, oh, that's it. So I think you need to ask that question to that guy. Come on, here. You seem to know more than me. Oh, speak.
Okay, so there is in Ansible 2.2 module named netconf config that is using Python and NC client on the client side. It's all in the Ansible docs.
So if you have any question, he's ready to answer anything. He got internet access, which I don't. Yep. You?
To what degree have you actually tried using configuration management in SDN? Using, we've got Juniper here, and one of these can be fully orchestrated. That can be routed firewall switches across multiple data centers. This seems to just summarize as being, yes, you can do it, but I don't know to what scale it is possible.
So the question is, at what scale can we use that?
Yeah.
That's a good question. I'm not planning to use that at a large scale because my job is mostly maintaining a lot of small projects. I know that for non-network stuff, there is Workspace managing their whole cloud using Ansible. I know that they have some patches and maybe some specific way like starting several Ansible controllers to deploy everything. I know that OpenStack is using Ansible for the whole CI, and I'm pretty sure that there is someone somewhere there that can explain that to you. But I have no idea of the scale. I guess that for something like 100 it should be fine, maybe more too. Then I have no clue on how it will work. And with Ansible, you can decide to start multiple processes at the same time. You just need to connect to something using the regular API, so it's not going to be a huge bottleneck. So I do not see any limitation beside CPU, and because that's in Python, it's not exactly the fastest language in the world. I'm not sure there is some limitation regarding network, so it should not be a problem there. There is no disk issue. It should work fine, and I guess you will likely hit some limitation regarding the expression of what you want to do. Like, if suddenly you want to configure 1 million switch, maybe that means that you need to get 1 million IP address in a file, and I'm pretty sure we are not testing that. And I'm pretty sure it's not the right approach, and you need something more high level. My point is more that currently the sysadmin and NetOps are doing stuff in the traditional way, but deploying a complete SDN solution is a huge effort, so maybe start to get people comfortable with the idea of doing a script and deployment and automation can be a small step. Because if something gets wrong, you can still go back like you did before. With an automated system, you try to fix stuff and the system is fixing your fix. That's not great. My use case is mostly to be able to delegate that with a Git commit and let the developer from the community to break their stuff instead of me breaking stuff for them. And I think there was someone having another question.
Yeah, well, it was kind of a follow-up question to Zin, whether it was an event configuration or more protocol-oriented, like southbound or northbound.
Can you speak louder?
It was more based on a follow-up question on his side that was actually more or less answering. It was mostly based whether it was a northbound intention or a southbound intention to the SDN controller.
Oh, so the question was already answered, that's what you said?
Kind of, yeah.
Okay, perfect. Because I'm not sure to know what you mean by southbound or outbound, so...
The SDN controller itself. So you know that it's centralized to the SDN controller.
Okay, yeah, no, there is no SDN controller per se. So the question was, is Ansible similar to an SDN controller?
Where would you put it? On the northbound to the SDN controller, or the SDN controller itself kind of an Ansible power, or in the southbound of the SDN controller, in your case?
So where would I put Ansible? I would place it on a server which is well protected, because once you have access to the whole network, you can do a lot of stuff. Currently, the way we are using for server is to have one server which is having a SSH key that can connect as root to everything. The way I would do for switch will be the same, maybe on a separate part, on a separate network, where you will put a bastion where people can connect to go to the switches, while you would place that. You can also do that deployment from the laptop of the sysadmin, which is what I would call the startup mode. But I think it's not a good idea. But it works. If you want to test a lab, you do not need anything but a laptop and maybe a lot of hardware to do something. And Ansible is quite flexible. You want to run it where you want. You want to set up a Raspberry Pi, it's running. You want to set up on FreeBSD, it's running. I mean, I've been doing both. So. I think I have no more time for questions, so again, if you want to contact me, I will be there, either tomorrow for other talk, or you can just find me somewhere trying to get my way to the next talk. So thanks for coming.